Growth Pod is brought to you by Genero, a leading growth agency in the Nordics. We interview marketing experts, business leaders, and entrepreneurs to uncover the stories and strategies behind profitable growth.
Today I'm joined by Åsa Borg, Chief Marketing Officer at Polestar. Polestar is a Swedish luxury electric vehicle brand selling its cars online in over 25 markets around the world. Welcome to the show, Åsa.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I think probably most, if not all of our listeners have seen the Polestar cars driving around, and they're beautiful cars, very well designed. I'm sure we're going to get to that piece of it, but I don't think people really know the background. Maybe, they know there's maybe some connection to Volvo, but I would love if you could briefly just kind of give us an overview of, what is Polestar? How did this all come to be?
Yeah, it's good with some background. We're quite a new brand. We're a startup in one of the most competitive industry, the automotive industries, focusing on electric vehicles only. You're right. We're part of. We have owners from Volvo Cars and also Geely, but we're listed as a separate company, and so we operate as a totally different unit. So it's more or less starting up a company from scratch, where we still have a light asset model that we call it. So we're using some, factories, some of the development things within the group, but from a commercial perspective, we're independent.
Got it.
We also have a very unique business models. We actually sell direct and online. So it's not only that we come into the market with a very unique offer selling only EVs, but we also do it selling online and direct, which is very different from the traditional automotive model using retailers. So that is a unique setup in itself, although many are now going in that direction.
Yeah, we definitely want to talk about that business model. You joined as Polestar's CMO from Volvo. What was it that made you? How did this opportunity come about? And were you hesitant at all, or was this something you just leaped at immediately?
Volvo Cars is a fantastic company, and there are a lot of great opportunities. I had at the time just joined a new part of the business, working with subscriptions, selling again direct and online. And working more on the operational part, so as a CEO of that unit. But then when I got the question of, taking part of this fantastic journey, starting up more or less from scratch with this fantastic brand, it was still quite an easy decision to join. It's a great company and opportunity, so it's quite easy.
Yeah, it's for sure a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Yes.
Could you take us back to when you first joined as a fresh CMO of this new car brand, and as you said, in a very competitive market, and you're trying to build this global new brand? What were the first things that was on your agenda? Like, these are things I need to work on. I need to prioritize these things in order for us to be successful. How did you kind of think about the priorities for the first year or so?
Yeah. So I think this takes us back like 3.5 years now that I've been with the company. And so now looking back, we have matured a lot since then. But at the time, it was, again, to really understand, most companies in the automotive industry has been there for century or decades at least. And now we have zero awareness. We don't have the retailers. So it's, again, the model of selling direct online, starting it all up from scratch with zero brand awareness. And at the same time, we had a super ambitious growth plan. So it's about launching several products, the Polestar 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and expanding them to do almost 30 markets in a really short time. So my job at the time and the priorities were really to look at what we had in place, and then also see what's the operative model, what team do we need to have, and really set the strategy and the tactics to go about this aggressive growth plan and reaching the sales target, with all these prerequisites at hand. So that was the first part, in addition to getting to know the brand and the people, of course, which is crucial.
There's so much there for us to kind of unpack, but But let's start, for instance, with the brand awareness piece. You mentioned you had zero awareness going into the market. What have you learned in terms of, strategies or tactics that you've used in order to, build that brand awareness?
I think it's in our case, it's been to have high ambitions quickly. So you need to grow not only the EV, which has different maturity in different markets, and also the brand, which when I joined, we had started in a few markets, but it was really zero in a lot of markets. So we divided actually the markets in different ways of going about it, depending on how mature the market was and how much we need to explain the whole EV package and also the awareness. But we've had very clear ambition that in order to drive sales long term, so you need to build the brand awareness. So it's that focus of long term at the same time as we grown then in the more tactical and ways of working as well.
Okay, that's interesting. So you recognize that some markets we need to focus on creating awareness and building the category, and others we can just focus purely on customer acquisition.
Yeah, no, not only actually, because we're still not that known. I think in the Nordics markets we're a bit more known, and but in some markets we still have quite a journey to do on the awareness part. But we see the big effect of you need to fall in love with the brand. Cars is still not something you buy. It's not a FMCG, or you need to have the long-term thinking and in order to drive long-term sales. So you need to have some patience, and you will not see the quick effects always from your activities.
Absolutely. How did you think about then building that long-term brand affinity so that people, when they, years down the road, when they make a new car purchase, they're going to choose your brand? And then maybe a related question is, how did you think about kind of using the Volvo legacy? Was that something you considered at all? Because I remember first time seeing the Polestar car, I was like, I've never seen this brand before, but it reminds me of Volvo, like the chassis, it reminds me of Volvo. So how did you think about that piece?
No, but the very first Polestar was actually a hybrid. It was the Polestar 1, which had more similarities with Volvo cars. I think since then, and since with the Polestar 2 and going forward, it's independent design and company, also from a brand perspective. So we're very separate. There's nothing that we work together on really. So it's a clear positioning, and I think the strength that we have going in new to this market is that we also have a brand that is built very much on design. It's very much about the product, the innovation, sustainability, where we have a super strong agenda. So we have a brand that we need to talk to the consumers about long term, so they can also fall in love in currently the Polestar 2, but also all the products to come.
Got it. So that was, as you mentioned, design and kind of all the work you're doing about sustainability. Were those kind of the two core ingredients in terms of thinking about the Polestar branding or positioning?
Yeah, design for sure, but it's also a lot about performance. We're born out of a performance brand from the beginning. It's about sustainability, but also innovation and tech. So we started early with, the Google cooperation and to make sure we have work with partners to be in the forefront on different unique techniques. So not always doing it all by ourselves, but also partnering in different areas.
You mentioned you've been at Polestar now for over 3 years. Have you seen any major changes in the market? I'm thinking specifically of like consumer attitudes towards, like have you succeeded in kind of educating customers about range anxiety and all those things, or how has the market changed?
No, it's a very good question, and we talked about it here in the office the other day, that in the beginning we got a lot of questions on, so you do really only do EVs? And that was sort of a bit suspicious, but now these days no one is asking that. I think the whole industry is now transforming. So that's, of course, you could argue you lose a bit the unique position, but also it makes the shift and transformation a bit easier. The range anxiety, all of that, with the infrastructure growing much quicker, is also helping. You can see that this is still an industry that is quite incentive driven with different markets. So I think we also need, when more and more people test drive, they will also see the benefit and the joy of driving electric cars, and then especially Polestars, which is a fantastic experience. So it's tricky to drive something else after you've driven an EV, I think.
I had the experience using that. There was actually a Volvo hybrid, so it's not a Polestar, but as a rental car. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard to go back. I think after that, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Speaking of awareness, kind of and tactics or strategies, there last year you ran a Super Bowl ad, which is, I think, that's very few. Safe to say you're the first guest on this podcast who has ever done a Super Bowl ad. So I think that's very exciting. It was called No Compromises. I think it was a great ad, so I'm going to put the link in the show notes. But can you talk a little bit about kind of the insight behind that, the messaging, and how this all came to be?
Yeah, I think that's probably a whole talk in itself, because it was a great journey, and I have to admit that it was not years or even months of planning behind it. We got the opportunity, and the timing felt, it was a bet, of course, because it's a huge investment so it requires the whole company to stand behind it. But we were at the time expanding quickly in the US, opening a lot of our spaces in different areas of US with very low brand awareness. And I mean, Super Bowl is still an event where the American and Canadian audience tune into TV to actually look at advertising. So it is a good opportunity. At the same time, it's usually crowded with car brands. It's celebrities. It's fun, and people expect to be entertained in a way. So also not being always inspired by the automotive industry, but we're also looking outside and how do you make an impact there? So I think we managed to create something here internally that actually told the brand story, but it was still product and very much about design and how nerdy we are with the design and the product and features, but still sparking a bit of conversation. So it's with the no compromises, the whole strategy and mechanics in the campaign was to say no about a lot of things. And we could see that sparked an interest. We were the most searched among the top 10 during the day. I think we were up there in the top searched word in Google in US, together with Super Bowl and Tom Brady and a lot of other. And same with the web traffic. It just went through the roof. And there you could see the answers to all the no's. So we had to turn the no's into answers. So you had the sustainability answer. You had why we're not sending people to Mars. We think we have things to solve here. And, there were a few hints to the industry that sparked a conversation in social, that created an interest. And we could also see from external research that we were among the strongest creative during the Super Bowl. So it worked. We didn't have to pay celebrities to break through. We did it in this way. So we were very happy. And it's not only the brand awareness that took us to a new level. It was also we sold cars. We had a lot of interest to come and join Polestar as an employee. And, so it had a lot of effect and build proud and so forth. So it was looking back, it was a huge effort in a really short time, but it was for sure worth it.
Yeah, I think, as you kind of mentioned there, I think the creative strategy of making those kind of, talking about some of the things happening in the industry and specifically one of your competitors, but also kind of tying it back to your USP and how you're thinking about the product, I think creatively was very well done. Very impressive. You did it only in a matter of a few weeks.
Yeah.
So let's go into that a little bit. Is that kind of indicative of how you're thinking about marketing in general at Polestar, as being very agile and kind of seizing opportunities as they come?
Yeah, I think we have tested a few different models of working, but we have decided to in-house the creative work and also part of the media work. It suits our model with selling direct and online. It's quick, it's agile, it's the same team who is close to the business that can see, even though we evaluate long term, but we can also see some quick changes that we need to do. And when you're that close to the brand and you live and breathe it, and you have passionate people, then they get inspired elsewhere than only from the automotive industry. So it works really well. It's fast, it's efficient, and so that has suited our way of working, at least. And they also serve all channels, which I think is important. It's .com, it's CRM, it's our own channel, it's paid, and so it all ties together. It's not different agencies doing different parts of it, but it's one team, one machinery almost sometimes, even though we're a small team.
That's really interesting because, like you said, if you hadn't had this model, you probably would not have been able to do it on such short notice. So was this a conscious decision from the very beginning that we are going to build this in-house capabilities when it comes to media and creative?
We have tested a few different agency setups, but I think in the end we always had a few creative resources in-house, and we sometimes ended up doing parts of it ourselves anyway. So we came to a stage where we just felt that, yeah, let's go for this now, and then we maybe change our mind in the future. But for now, this works, and it's the same with the media. So the lower, or the programmatic purchases, the lower part of the funnel to run for all the markets except a few who have their own platforms locally, like Korea or China, for instance.
Do you find that it's hard, just on a personal level, to kind of keep track of this massive complexity? Because you're literally, on one hand, on one day, you're planning this massive, broad, top of the funnel media awareness push in the Super Bowl ad, and the next day you may be focusing on programmatic and trying to get test drives in Germany or some, Do you find it hard to keep track of this entire, this massive complexity?
Yeah, but I think that's also part of why people like working here. I think it's because you get that full picture and you see how it all ties together. So I think that's actually part of the passion people have here, because they see the links of what they do. It's close to the business. They see results. So it's super complex, and it could be, especially in these times when there are different macro effects coming in, it is super complex. And it's not that we have the quick purchase thing either. So you need to have confidence in your funnel and your data and how you work.
Could you talk a little bit about how you kind of built up that funnel, that data, and to get that, like you said, confidence, because it is a very long sales cycle. But because of your business model, theoretically, you should be able to measure everything and kind of figure out, what's driving, which kind of efforts and channels are driving what kind of results. So how have you gone about building up that data and getting that confidence?
We have built it up so we have it all in one place. We're actually moving away from that to system-wise and things like that. But we try to get a global overview. But then we also have local markets who do an incredibly important job of doing all the test drives, events. They spend parts of the marketing locally. So of course, this is a global teamwork in the end. It's not that we all sit here in the headquarters and do all the work. It's a great and fantastic effort in all the markets. But we put in all the spend we're doing and categorize it and measure then all the time. We have a certain brand tracker that measures every month, or they do interviews every week, measure every month. But then we also, of course, measure our search, web traffic, configuration of cars, test drives, orders. So, and we work very closely with sales to have some KPIs that we follow, and then a lot of other metrics that we look at. But in the end, it's about orders and profitability, of course.
I can really see how it would be really exciting to work at Polestar, because compared to the traditional setup where you're just doing brand campaigns and some other activities and you kind of just have to wait and see and hope that something happens. But if you can actually track it on a monthly basis, these top of funnel, but also bottom of funnel metrics, and try to influence all of them, that that's a lot more exciting, at least to me, and I guess the team.
Yeah, it's
your team
super
feels the
exciting,
same.
and it comes with a lot of responsibility to the teams. Of course, it's a huge responsibility. You cannot really blame someone else. It's about it's a full team, but it's a lot of efforts that needs to go into marketing, and then it's tricky. Again, coming back to the macro environment, and it feels like we have had a lot of that the last couple of years. If it's not COVID or semiconductors or wars, inflation, recession. So I mean, sometimes it would be nice with just normal work.
Yeah. I mean, you said you've been at 3 years. It's been the last 3 years have been there's been a lot of macro stuff happening.
Yeah.
So you're building this global brand, and what have you learned? What have you learned about media and channel choices? Specifically, is there any market where you've noticed that, okay, it's enough for us to rely on digital channels, more, let's say, more bottom of the funnel stuff? Or do you find that those traditional, whether it's, a Super Bowl ad or just out of home or traditional media, print or TV, is needed to create that awareness, but also that credibility?
I mean, we are actually reviewing that as we speak to see how we can maybe now when we have matured in some markets, maybe change our tactics a bit. Still, this is a very emotional buying you do. You need to make sure people come to our site or to our spaces. We can also tell the longer story and really explain not only the product, but the brand and efficient. And that's tricky to do in a second or two in very tactical targeted messaging, and no one knows who you are. So I think it's still that combination that will be required long term and also for us having more products. We have a Polestar 2 now, so some are familiar with that one, but the fantastic products we have leading up to the 5 and the 6, which are more luxurious niche cars, it also showed the direction where the brand is going. So I think we need to constantly tell and remind about the brand and the story and what we believe in. So to go only tactical and targeted, I think we're not there yet. And it doesn't really suit the category, I think, either. It's a very emotional, we're an emotional brand and we have a lot to tell. So it's that finding that good balance, which will be important for success, I think.
That makes a lot of sense. How are you thinking about positioning and competitiveness for the future? Recently, this must have been the last couple of weeks, I noticed in Finland that they had BYD from China open up some kind of showroom, and I think they just launched there. So the market, I mean, you have companies coming in from China. You have obviously Tesla. You have the legacy automakers who are making big pushes towards EV, and in the middle of that, you got Polestar. So how are you thinking about the future? And just add, more complexity to the mix. You got government incentives that are coming and going and probably changing by market. So in the midst of all of that, how are you thinking about kind of creating a defensible position for Polestar?
No, but I think that's a fair question. We're actually going about to do a big to learn much more, especially in US. We're doing a big study as we speak now to make sure we resonate and, we find the right audience and that we're positioned, especially for the future products, in a good way. And we're constantly tracking then the brand relevance and the product relevance. But it is very important going forward, of course, to keep that constant relevant and highlight the things in the product and also in the brand that would resonate. But again, the competition is increasing, and there are good things with that. And it's also, of course, some of them coming in super aggressive on price and so forth. But they also have a journey to do on, telling who they are. And we're not competing in the mass market segment where it's only about price. So I think that will always differ us from some of the others coming in.
You mentioned, you're doing this brand study or this study in the U.S. Is there anything you've learned about localization and any kind of big changes that you've had to make based on, specific market in terms of your messaging, your positioning, or is it kind of, are you able to have this overall brand story be the same, even though you're in over 25 markets around the world?
Yeah, I think it depends. I think you can be locally relevant locally. I think we're very product focused, and so in that sense, it's also easier to be relevant. We also always do our communication in a quite timeless way, placeless. So it's not that we're trying to push a lifestyle on our customers or put our communication in a certain lifestyle. We think most of our customers have a lifestyle that they're happy with. So I think we're portraying the cars usually in a way that is quite easy to take out on a global level. So that helps, actually. So for now, it's global, and maybe that will change in the future. But for now, it's global, and we'll roll it out in that way.
Yeah, I think design is a core part of your brand.
Yeah.
About the brand, and good design is appreciated around the world.
Yes,
it's very universal.
And the sustainability agenda is of course important, more important in some markets, but it's actually coming in more and more markets that's important, and performance and innovation is sort of also relevant throughout. So I think we come with a brand that resonates quite well on a global level.
Totally. What have you learned? What have you seen about? Because I could imagine, like you said, when you drive a Polestar, when you drive an EV, it's a great experience. So, when someone buys it, presumably some of their, the buyer's friends are going to go try, and they're going to maybe have that kind of similar experience. So what have you seen about when it comes to referrals and word of mouth? Is that a huge, big driver for you in terms of new customer acquisition? How does that piece fit into what you're kind of doing on the marketing side of things?
We have a super strong community that are sharing things and are very engaged. So that's an important group that we work with. And then the referral program we had in place last year, I think, and that's also proven very successful. So we have some really good brand ambassadors out there. So they're good and important for us.
I want to go back to design, because that's come up a lot of times. I think an interesting thing about Polestar is that your CEO, Thomas, he has a background as a car designer. So can you talk about how kind of that has shaped the overall brand and how you're thinking about design?
Yeah, I think that's actually crucial for who we are, and that we manage to be so strong on the brand, because I think to have a CEO who understands and, maybe better than many of us, the importance of a strong brand and design helps us being that consistent in every touch point. That's how we build our spaces around the world. That's how we do the communication. It's in our offices. It's everywhere. So and he's also very much involved in the work and in the approval process. And I think also having a background as a car designer, he knows the passion that goes into designing the cars. And also our designer, Maximilian Misoni, I think he's also very involved in how we portray the cars to make sure they come out as he had planned, so to speak. So it's a huge team effort across the company, and Thomas is very much involved in all of that, and challenge us and supporting in that sense. So that's key to the success of Polestar, I think.
I mean, absolutely. And it must be helpful to have that kind of North Star design, being that North Star, and it's really encoded into the company's DNA.
Yeah.
And I guess that just having really thoughtful, elegant design is kind of works as a multiplier for all your media investments. Because if you have a beautiful car, I mean, the awareness that you get is going to be much higher than if you have some, more generic car that you're trying to push in these same channels.
Yeah, for sure. It's fantastic as a marketeer and brand person to work with fantastic products, of course. So it's a true joy.
How do you though? How are you able to balance that when you're managing the whole funnel? So you're doing everything from these big investments in top of funnel, but you're also doing these tactical things. Do you have very clear guidelines for the teams, whether it's local or the global teams, in terms of the creatives and things like that, to make sure that there's design is always at the forefront?
Yes, I mean there are no local creative. All the creative work is done here and approved here by the team. So if there are local deviations, it always needs to be approval from here. But we always try to work also with the market. They are very creative and innovative in finding fantastic places to be in. And then we have our brand and content team who really work with the markets to make sure we can do those fantastic out of home. So whatever opportunities they come across. So it's still a great teamwork to make sure we not only package toolkits and hand over to the markets, but we try to be in those fantastic places, whether it's big, super big out of homes in China or taking over big squares in Austria or train stations in Italy. Wherever we find fantastic locations, it's a true teamwork locally and centrally to do that.
Got it. Would you say that you're currently in kind of the testing phase where you're experimenting? You mentioned a couple examples there. You're just experimenting with a lot of things. Or have you already started to kind of build this playbook of like, oh, this is how we're going to work in different markets depending on their maturity? This is when we're going to do these media placements or these types of activities. What kind of stage would you say that you're in right now?
I think we as a company are also exploring constantly and challenging and testing. But we do learn a lot, and especially being a new brand and you make sure that people remember us and see us. So we do a lot of testing creative-wise, and we're also adapting a bit on the maturity of markets. So we're still exploring, still testing, but we have learned, and we're constantly learning. And I think that's crucial because also the society is shifting and so forth. But we have it's not one size fits all. It's very different depending on the maturity of market. And we're still so new. We launched a few of our markets last year. So and then we're still niche in a few markets with EVs. So it's definitely a bit different compared to Norway, which is among the most EVs per capita in the world. So that's for sure very different in markets like that.
Absolutely. Speaking of markets, I mean, Polestar is a quite new brand, and you're already in some over 25 markets around the world. What was that decision to kind of go global from the very beginning, as opposed to focusing on a select number of, not obviously Norway is an exception, but let's say focusing on Northern Europe or Europe in general. What was the decision what was the insight kind of behind that decision to go Europe, US, Asia from the very beginning?
I think that decision was actually a bit taken before my time. So I came in exactly when we started to execute on that. So but it's again, there were in the past, it was mainly Tesla who were a global player, and there were not a lot of the others. They were either locally US or China mainly, and we become sort of the next one to go global. And now I think we can see that more are doing that. But so it was part of our very aggressive growth plan when it comes to markets and products and growing big in a short time.
And it seems to have paid off, the strategy.
Yeah, it's been a lot of hard work, but it pays off, and it's great.
It's a lot of fun. Also, I'd love to ask just a couple of kind of rapid fire questions here to round things off. First, what's been your best moment, kind of proudest best moment so far at Polestar?
I think it's tricky to rank, and sometimes those moments are the small ones, that you celebrate every day. But of course, as a company, we've had a few moments when we listed on NASDAQ or did a Super Bowl. But as a car company, it's the car launches usually. I mean, it's a fantastic moment, how the whole company comes together for revealing all the secrecy, all the leading up to, and then how you reveal it and hopefully see the fantastic applause from the world, but also all the work that goes into it. Not only the whole development of the car, but also from our perspective, having the the site up and the campaigns going and the CRM and the social, the whole team effort of making all those moments, whether it's a car launch or Super Bowl or a listing, that's fantastic moments, I think. And because it requires so many people, it's not a one-man show or a five-man show. It's a true cross-company team effort, which is a lot of fun.
I can only imagine how incredibly emotional those launches must be, because you know that there's so much work that's gone into it, and you try to make sure that everything's perfect, and then you get to launch this into the world and see people's reaction as they're seeing this for the first time. Must be very proud moments.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Second question. You already mentioned this, which is the listing on NASDAQ. So, how has being a public company? How did that impact how your work? Did it impact? How is it different now? How did you think about that?
Yeah, and for our team, I think it's not a major impact. Of course, it's a lot of things you need to relate to when it comes to information, when you share things, so forth. And I guess as a signal to the whole organization that you sort of grow up, you become a listed company, and that comes with responsibility on a few things when it comes to processes, documentation, things like that. So I think it's that. And but for my area, I should say it's less of an impact than before. But for sure, as a company, it's big.
Yeah, you're maturing a little bit in a way. That's what I've heard.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, next question. What's been the biggest challenge so far?
Yeah, in addition to all the macro things that we already touched upon, which I think has been a big challenge, I think it's still, starting something from scratch, especially with some people coming from, an automotive industry where a lot of things are in place, where it's also run in a different way. Also for myself, when I started, you expect a few things to be in place, but here you actually need to put them in place. All the customer communication, when they do different things, take them through the journey. It's a huge learning, and a huge team effort to get all of that in place. And the other thing about not being known, if you worked for other companies that's been around, and all of a sudden no one knows, and that's your world, and you think everyone knows, and then to grow that and the effort it takes is so that's a huge challenge. But I think that's also part of the whole journey of setting all of this in place. But it's still a huge challenge for sure.
Yeah, I can only imagine. You mentioned, we talked a little bit about the team. You've built this great in-house team. Do you have any personal frameworks or tricks or strategies when it comes to hiring? Like, how do you identify and then attract the very best talent that you need to build a Polestar as a global brand?
I have to admit that there is no strategy or tactic. Many of them were here when I came, or most of them are still around. Actually, they were fantastic people, and we have jointly built teams locally and centrally. But I think it's more the brand, I think, that attracts, and also, again, the closeness to the business, that you can influence what you do. We're so small, but you can still do big things like a Super Bowl or big creative work. There is not a lot of frameworks. We're very creative and innovative, so you can, as a creator, there are really no limits, and you can explore things. But it's a lot about finding passionate people. I think to work here, you probably need to have a few things in mind. Being that design driven, that nerdy. It's not that we do things 80% or 90 or even 99%. It's pixel perfect, and that's not for everyone. I can tell you. So the whole design thing and the passion to constantly have Polestar in mind and not build your own agenda, I think is crucial. So we look at a lot on the personality We're not always looking for the superstars, but the passionate people who can work in an environment like this. So that's, I think, I don't know if that answers your question, but there's no hiring strategy. But you need to have passion for the brand. I think that's crucial.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of people who have that passion, and for the right person, I think it sounds like working at Polestar is really a unique, amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
Last question. Is there anything about Polestar that you wish that people, like some underappreciated or unknown fact about the cars or anything about the company that you wish that more people would know?
I think the whole sustainability agenda is one thing that is much bigger than, the empty words that or statements that some companies have. But I think it's more getting into the cars. I think the true passion and when I drive myself or when I go with one of our professional drivers, is just such an amazing experience, and the whole performance comes into a new dimension also for not car nerds, but it's something, and the whole designed interior, all of that. So getting into our cars, I wish more, and I hope going forward that even more have the opportunity to experience that with also now Polestar 2 and 3 and 4 coming. So that would be great.
That's a really good. I think, like you said, I guess that's the aha moment, is when you get into the car and you get to drive it.
Yeah.
I think before you've had that, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, or not as much sense.
Now, just to sit in it makes a good start, but then to drive it, it's then you get the extra dimension.
When you get the acceleration, when you feel that instant torque, it's like, wow, this is what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Åsa, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure. For people who want to learn more about, of course, Polestar, you can go to the website, I think, book your kind of test drives and learn more. And then for people who want to follow you, is LinkedIn in the best way to connect and to follow what you're
Definitely.
up to?
LinkedIn is perfect.
Okay. I'll add the link in the show notes, as well as the link to the Super Bowl ad. People should go check it out. I think it's creatively, it's one of the, I think it's a really, really good ad. So good job on that. And I think it's really exciting to see a Swedish team, a Swedish kind of car brand taking on this category and becoming a global brand. So it's really exciting to see that from the sidelines here. So good luck to you and the team. I hope, wish you all nothing but success for the future.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. Great show you have. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. You can find all episodes of The Growth Pod on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts.